Hello, I'm Tim Russ. Live long and podcast.
Oh, that's not me. Hey, hello and good evening. I was about to say Star Trek, but it's not Star Trek. For All Mankind, Season 1, Episode 1, Red Moon, is over. And it has been since 2019. But we're just getting started here in 2025 to begin our new live stream review series here on Live Long and Podcast. A new show, a new non-Star Trek show for our Monday nights. It's For All Mankind. I'm Dave Mader. We're streaming here live, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook. You might be listening to us in the audio version. And we got a great team, a great panel here to break down tonight's episode and subsequent episodes of For All Mankind as we catch up to hopefully the newest season, Season 5, when it comes out. If we're lucky, we'll be all caught up by then. First up, it's a man who's never seen this show before. It's Kevin Millard.
Hello,
That's
Dave.
quite an intro.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Here's a man who's never seen this show. It's Kevin, and we're gonna try not to spoil it for him in the process. Here's a man who has only seen some of the show, but he's gonna watch the rest of it as we go. It's Jody Simpson.
Hey, Dave, I'm just here sitting in mission control.
Yeah, make sure you have a dart.
I always got a dart with me in mission control, Dave.
Of course.
What are we doing? All right.
Yeah. And coming to us from the moon, is it full of cheese? It's Adam Woodward.
Hey, you know what? I discovered I've only watched 2 episodes. Whoa, 2 episodes. I can't do this. 2 episodes of this series. So and this was good. Like I completely enjoyed this episode. So
Your
I'm
camera.
looking forward to this, Dave. I'm looking forward to it. And by the way, that was a great opening. I love to see our name in NASA font.
Well,
Yes.
Hold on. They did fake the moon landing. Look at it.
Your camera looked about as good as the Soviets landing on.
Here's a woman who had no idea that the show existed a week ago, and she got me so excited after she watched the first episode with a voice message where she said, "Wow, this show is pretty good. I'm going to keep going." It's Heather Narduzzi.
Hello. I can't wait to get started talking about this because, as Dave said, I went in blind. I knew nothing about the show. And he asked if I wanted to be on the podcast. I said, let me watch the first episode first before I say yes. 7 minutes into the episode, I sent him a glowing text message. It was like, I'm on board. So good. Can't wait to get into it. Red Moon.
Red Moon. The Soviets got there first. And here's the man who has a degree in history, is a bit of a historian, and can help, he's going to help keep us on track as we, go into this divergent timeline that this show is set in. A timeline where the Soviets landed on the moon before the Americans did. It's Jeff Mader.
Yep, here I am, ready to break down probably annoy you all of all my little nitpicks that I'm definitely going to have with this show. Because anytime you go down a alternate history timeline, things are, as a historian, like, are just going to bother me. But that's okay. I'm here for it. You guys are here to help me cope.
Okay, well,
Jeff,
group
this is going
therapy.
to be funny because I know very little about history. History and geography are my two worst subjects. So while I was watching this show, I found myself pausing it a lot and going, "Hey Google, is so and so a real person?"
Yeah, and there is, you know what, to their credit,
I think it's kind of funny that you know, in keeping with the 60s, because it was the 60s and we didn't know any better, that, you know, Heather's our Margot in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, that's a good analogy. Sam's here. He's saying he's never heard of For All Mankind. Well, you're spelling it
Sam,
wrong.
you are in for a treat. I don't want to discourage you from watching the podcast, but you should pause this podcast right now and go watch the pilot and then come back and watch the rest of the podcast because you're going to love it.
It's on for Apple TV. If anyone's out there wondering where to watch this show, that's where you get it. Or, you know, other people have other methods too. Jody's becoming a smoke-filled room over there.
There's too much smoking in this room.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how they get through mission control. So if you didn't know, and I've kind of alluded to it already. So in this show, it starts with Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov becoming the first man on the moon in June of 1969 instead of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong as it was originally.
Fun fact, Dave, he was actually the first guy.
Not a real person. I looked it up.
Alexei?
Yeah, he was a real person.
I looked it up wrong then.
No, he was a real person, and he was the first man ever to do a spacewalk.
So Alexei, the Alexei person we're referencing here. So in this show, in particular in the first season, there are quite a few real historical figures, and there are a few fictionalized people. Like the main character of the show, Ed Baldwin, played by Joel Kinnaman, is a fictionalized character. He's kind of based on other astronauts, as is Gordo Stevens, as is Tracy Stevens. But they're kind of taking bits and pieces from certain real life people, whereas there are real, like, just straight up characters from real life and history, like Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong.
Buzz Aldrin. That's obviously a fake name.
Yeah, it sounds pretty made up.
Buzz Lightyear, I know.
I think you skipped like I think they did an amazing job. First of all, our parents, I don't know if you guys parents told you about this, like this event in history, and so excited to see it happen and all this. But I think they did an amazing job of capturing people huddled around their televisions and really not knowing what was going on there until the reveal that it wasn't the Americans on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I love that because I didn't know anything about the show at all. So that was a really cool reveal.
Like, so the second rewatch, that's where I just did today, and I was like, oh yeah, well, if you actually look at the people, nobody's impressed in the States, but in the other countries they are. So it's like, so they already know, obviously, that this is what's happening. But
well, okay, but it's not just the Americans; it's literally the guys that are working on the space program. Like it's kind of like, you know, watching like Russia win gold medal in hockey in Canada.
Yes,
all the guys are in the bar going, they beat the Americans. We should have been there. You know, like it's kind of like that, you know, because the whole time I'm watching the show, I'm like, why were when it actually happened and the Americans were on the moon, all that was a bunch of Russians dudes just in a bar going, ugh, you know, like
that's what they do all the time anyway.
That's what they just do. They just kind of grumble in bars, drinking vodka. That's what I understand.
Or maybe they were more excited in the fact that we did it, regardless of the country.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. Well, yeah, none of us were alive in 1969, and none of us were alive for the moon landing as such. But yeah, of course, it's always been talked about. It's always been this history. But as far as I understood, we land, or we don't do the American. NASA space program lands on the moon, and then they go back a few more times. I've of course seen a film, Apollo 13, which is kind of a few missions after the Apollo 11 one. I guess it's 2. And they had the whole the emergency in space where they never landed on the moon. They had the whole spaceship malfunction with the tanks and everything else, and it was getting them back was a whole hard thing. So I had seen that film.
Even the build up, with Kennedy's speech and the common goal that they had through the 60s to get there, it was very good. And then that letdown, I think that they played off so well.
Are all those clips of Nixon fake?
Yes, largely.
I hope not. That's my favorite part.
Well,
Yeah.
I noticed that the way that they did the Nixon clips is that they had a voiceover. They were showing actual video of Nixon,
Right.
like
Yes.
holding papers and getting ready to make a speech and that sort of thing, but they never showed him actually saying the words.
Yeah.
So
Right,
of the voiceover. So I was wondering if the voiceover, if they got like an impersonator to do it, or if it was AI, maybe.
Famously,
I don't think it was Nixon.
Famously, Nixon recorded everything in the White House. Like that's how he got caught with Watergate and everything. Like, but like, so like the presumption is like these are real tapes, but I don't think they are. Like just because the way he's talking is like it would have been a huge news like already. So.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, who did they get to do that Nixon voiceover?
See if,
is it
see
like
if we
AI
can find
cobbled
that
together from clips of his voice, or
Adam
is
might
it
know
somebody doing a Nixon impersonation?
It sounds like something Nixon would say, like a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff he's saying about like, oh, they're gonna blame me, Kennedy started this whole thing, and I'm the one who's gonna trip over the goal line. Like,
It was actually Jeff Mader doing the
That's a pretty
Nixon
good
role.
Nixon impression, Jeff.
all you gotta do is get angry and kind of talk like this. Oh,
Let's see if I was just seeing if I could figure out who it was. It says, Jim Meskimen does the voice of
a
Richard
JM.
Nixon.
So that's
Yeah. So we're gonna get into all of this, but I want to get to the people who have never seen this before. Kevin, in particular, do you like this show so far? Or how did you stop at the first episode? And
I did stop at the first episode. It grabbed me right away, though. Even I'm interested to see what this show says would have happened if Russia had landed on the moon first, because I've never really understood the idea of being first being a big deal.
right. I agree.
And so it'll be interesting for me to see what this show has to say.
Oh, if you're not first, you're last.
if you're
Who
not
cares?
first, you're last.
Ricky Bobby.
You're still there.
Americans care. We're the best.
I understand
Or they're
that.
the best. And
So the Soviets did have a program to go to the moon, but after that they abandoned it.
Okay, so actually so the whole concept of this show is the guy that was like the Werner von Braun of Russia died in 1966. And Ronald D. Moore said that is basically when the divergence occurs in this alternate timeline.
Okay.
Is basically that if that guy did not die in 1966, that was the head of the Russian moon program, then it's actually quite plausible that the Russians would have gotten to the moon first, because they did everything first. They had the first satellite, they had the first spacewalk, they were doing everything first. So it makes sense that they would have done that first.
I
So
think
that was the whole concept of the show.
you're also got to keep in mind, like, there's two superpowers right now, right, in this timeline, and you have to beat. I mean, the Americans have already been humiliated. They hadn't been first in space. They hadn't been first spacewalk, and so they had to do something. And plus, it was a tough time for U.S. Right? You got Vietnam going on, all the civil unrest happening. They don't have a feel good story. Kennedy was shot.
Right. And the other Kennedy, a year
Was
earlier.
shot. Was shot.
Martin Luther King.
It was a bad decade until.
What you're saying is that the reason to be first was for something for Americans
We
to be
need a
proud
win.
of, but
They need a win.
But it really didn't matter as far as space or space exploration is concerned. Who was first?
Well,
I think this was the
I
thing to
think
hang your hat
also
on.
they were concerned about armaments. About because I mean it was during all of that time of the Cold War and everything. So I think they were concerned about getting there first so they could militarize it.
They kind of mentioned that in the show where they have a clip of Kennedy saying that. He's like, he says that with Russia getting to space first, he's like, that is like a concern basically for the military. Like they were thinking about that in the early 60s, even before Kennedy was killed.
Right.
So
This is the height of the Cold War, and I won't spoil too much about what comes after this, but the idea basically is that the space race is going to keep going from here. So the Russians are going to get on the moon first, and then the Americans get there second, and then it becomes a kind of a one-up thing from there a little bit. And so in our timeline, in our history, the space program basically continues into the 70s and 80s, but kind of really fizzles out by the time I'm a kid, like growing up in the 90s. It wasn't anything going on.
There was the Challenger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Challenger incidents in 86, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that day. That was grade 9.
And do you feel like that was the end of the space program that day?
I was home on lunch hour watching the launch when that happened. It was a huge day. It was awful. People were shocked. But yes, because the space program went on hold at that point because they had to figure out what happened. It went on hold for years.
Right, and then they did a few. They would go to the space station and things like that. But really, like the program really stalled for.
Like when you think that Artemis now is to get to Mars, and they're still fiddling around with that. Like
I'm not totally sure that during the 80s NASA stalled. Like we were dealing with. No, it didn't. We had what 130 STS missions between.
Yeah, but between 84 when that happened.
86, I think that happened.
Things certainly slowed down, but what that was more for investigation wise. Like they're not going to launch another one when they just blew up.
but if you look at the comment there about NASA lost its nerve, right after the fire,
which is a theme of this episode too,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, yeah, you could look at it that way if you could say we haven't technically landed on anything since, except for Mars with robots, right?
But do you need a superpower to be against you so you're motivated to go ahead and be first to everything? Maybe you do.
I think superheroes definitely do, yeah.
And that the economics of this are all going to be played out in this show as well, and there's going to be a lot of discussions. We're going to have a lot to talk about over as we, it's probably going to take us a year to catch up on all 4 seasons of this, and I'm not quite sure when the 5th season's going to come out.
I have a
yet,
question.
Mm-hmm.
Am I in stall? I've only watched this episode, and I had watched it like a few years ago, and I've rewatched it tonight. But it reminded me so much of the Ryan Gosling Neil Armstrong movie, because the amount of scenes just in this episode of a guy eating breakfast and his kid comes up to him and there's a fight, but with him and his wife.
He's leaning on something eating or drinking.
Yeah, he's always eating. Like it's just the way they shoot these astronaut movies and shows. I'm like, what? Like, why is this always the
they
thing?
were they were the pop icons of their time. Like
astronauts got to eat, Jeff.
It's just, but like that movie, like especially this show is a bit better, but that movie First Man or whatever is one of the most boring movies I've ever watched in my life.
Never bothered to watch it. I heard it was so bad.
that was a year. That was a year. That came out a year before this show started, but it's probably just a coincidence that they both are set in that time.
But
period.
they did that.
Watch that movie like this week before we watch the next episode. You're gonna be like, I just watched like that scene in that show. Like it's like the exact same.
2 hours long.
Yeah, but 2 hours long, and like.
But
really...
I think when you look at like Apollo 13 too with Hanks, like what they're trying to show is these guys are just normal guys. Like they come home at the end of the day and they have their family and they got to deal with it. Yes, they're pop heroes and they're going to the moon, but man, at the end of the day, they got kids to get, and they're paying the bills.
Who hasn't gotten drunk and spilled the beans of everything that you're doing at a super secret space program? Who hasn't done that?
Who hasn't? It's
everyone here has done that.
It's a typical Saturday night around these parts. Well, we'll get into the screenshots and we'll break this all down. Everything that takes place in Red Moon, specifically. Let's see if this is the best.
Look at that.
No,
I don't know who the Speaker of the House was back then, but he looks old.
he was old back then.
He's 48 years old.
That was Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. It was his first term.
Strom Thurmond.
Yeah, so we start off with a lot of these clips of the early 1960s of the space program, of them getting ready to go. We see a lot of Cold War era rhetoric, the civil rights movement. Basically, all these establishing shots, a lot of it archival footage to really put us in this time frame, put us in this setting before they go into the divergent timeline of it all. That this is the same starting off point. We see references to the Kennedy brothers, of course, assassinated in 63 and 68, respectively. The buildup of the Cold War and the space program and missiles and everything else, but also this mission of going to the moon first, and really focusing a lot on Kennedy, and his administration, I suppose, being the one who really kick-started a lot of that. But I gotta imagine a lot of that was already in place, right, Jeff? Like,
I would imagine so, but
he was the young, fresh, hip, new president with all this hope for the future.
Yeah, and it was his inaugural speech. It was like probably one of the most inspiring for the American people. Like it was,
It's funny that you have that image up there, because that rocket there is the Saturn IV.
The Saturn IV.
And the Saturn V is the rocket that they used to get them to the moon. So.
And that is the next episode is called "He Built the Saturn V."
Yeah,
because it's
Saturn IV.
This is the Saturn IV on screen, but I think the Saturn V is the
Saturn V is the one they used for.
That's right, but I thought the episode was called "He Built the Saturn IV."
Oh, maybe it is. Sorry.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Well, I have
no,
the
it's
right.
5. I can't count apparently.
Okay. It's Roman numerals. It's hard.
It's okay. You don't need counting to go to space.
But okay, I mean, and the other question I have is, are they gonna go into who Werner von Braun really is?
Well,
yes,
not in the first episode.
That is a lot about what the next episode is about.
Okay, good, because you can't dilly dally over that guy's background.
Okay, we won't dilly dally. Okay. Don't worry.
We'll save it for the next episode. But remember, I said earlier I'm not a history buff, so I didn't know that was coming.
Okay.
So we'll get into that next week.
Oh yeah. So he's a dark individual.
The first character we actually get to meet in this show is not Ed. What's her name? I can't remember right now. Aleda. And Aleda will be an important character in this show beyond this season as well. So I'll say that as much. So we start off in Mexico, Paras de la Fuente, in June of 1969. And she's looking up at the moon. When she's called, by her father to come see her mother, and in Mexico, they're all watching the moon landing together. Aleda is not super interested in this. She's kind of saying
that the screenshot you chose is her rolling her eyes. How long do we have to watch this?
How long do I have to watch this? Of course, it's in English, and it seems like at this point they're all speaking Spanish, and they just talk and talk and talk, and it's boring. But her mother tells us, "This is special. You'll remember this for the rest of your life. This is a big moment for all mankind, if you will, the beginning of the future." And you being a part of it. Maybe even
Jeff,
go to the
maybe
moon one
you
day.
can answer this for me. Is this newscaster meant to be like Cronkite or somebody specific, or
I think it's like the show created him. I don't know if he's meant to be anybody. I just think that they wanted it to look period accurate. So
right.
But I don't.
It was always an old guy with gray hair that was doing the news back then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not doing a direct Cronkite impression.
Right.
And they could have done that,
the same type of.
Yeah, they probably tried to figure out if they could do this all with archival, but then they realized they have to get him to say the Soviets are on the moon. These things, it's better just to.
I don't know what he's saying, but he's speaking some gibberish.
Well, if you remember, the actual footage of him when they actually landed and it came back, the Eagles landed, he was. He took his glasses off and he was smiling ear to ear. It was a big event for Cronkite.
Right. Mm-hmm. The other thing we find out in this establishing scene is that Aleda's mother is ill. That that she should be in bed herself, but she wants to be here for this moment as they continue on the moon. Then we go over to Houston, Texas, to the Outpost Tavern. This will also be an important location in this season and beyond. This is kind of the bar where all the astronauts hang out in Houston. And they're all in the bar watching the news as they were in Mexico. We get to see Ed Baldwin, who will be one of our main protagonists of this show. He's there with the rest of them, just watching in awe. We then see the home of Gordo Stevens and Tracy Stevens as he's coming home in his sports car. putting on the news. And there, we're not meant to really understand this yet, that it's the Soviets landing on the moon, not the Americans. So there's a bit of a reveal here in this establishment. Then we go to Margot, who is a NASA space engineer working at Mission Control at the Manned Spacecraft Center, and because it wasn't called the Johnson Space Center yet. And so she comes in to find Werner von Braun, as Jeff was alluding to, who is a character in the show, played by Canadian actor Colm Fiore, who does a really great job in the role. Very interesting, very, very fun performance, I think, as Werner von Braun. As they're just looking up for Mission Control in Houston, that live from the moon, we get to see Gene Cranston. As he was played by a real person? Yeah, he was a real person. He was played by Ed Harris in the Apollo 13 movie, I believe.
I didn't realize that was the same character. Awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right.
There's a lot of them, actually.
Yeah, quite a few. Not all these.
Rewatch Apollo 13 after watching this.
Right. It's worthwhile doing, because I did it with Davin and Chris a few years ago on Hold Up, and it was a good timing for this.
Don't watch First Man.
Don't watch.
I will not. Thank you. After the abysmal review you gave it earlier, I'll just eat some cereal. And
then when you're done that, drop some acid and watch some Interstellar. It'll be great. Be a good time.
So it's all coming. There's a bit of this crescendo moment, and then we realize it's not an American landing on the moon. As Ed pours another shot for himself there in the bar. The depressing feeling of all this. That the Queen.
I got to tell you, I didn't. As I said, I went in completely blind, and I watched this. I was sitting in my living room watching it by myself, and when the reveal came that it was the Russians that landed first, my jaw dropped, and I just sat there like.
It was a really cool. I remember having that same type of experience the first time.
So cool.
Yeah. Second time.
That's when I texted Dave and was like, "I love this show. I'm on board. Can't wait."
Right. And you can just see everyone in the outpost is just seething angry, especially Ed Baldwin. And we hear that the Russian say something, Alexei say something in Russian, and then they're like, we're going to get a translator on that. And he was saying, I love the Marxist-Leninist way of life, and or something or other. It was not quite one small step for mankind, or for man.
I did it for my country. I did it for Lenin as Marxist. It was a little different than Neil Armstrong.
It was a little different, but some similarities.
Well, he did say at the end, the first step to the stars or whatever. Like he gave it a go.
Yeah.
Here you go.
And that is our start for everyone to get to the stars or something like that.
Yeah.
And that is our cold open, and that is the premise of the entire show as we go into the first episode titled Red Moon.
Really excellent setup for the whole show and the series. Really well done for the cold open.
Yeah.
How does everybody feel about this intro? Because
hate it, skip it.
Boring.
It's right up there with it's right up there with Star Trek Picard for openings.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I like it, honestly. Like, I think the music's really good. It was done by Jeff Russo.
I get what he was trying to do, but it's just it's so boring.
Give me a little. It's been a long time. Give me a little. I would.
Is that what we want back?
I would have taken that over this. Let me put it that way.
This actually reminds me of like that with the man there. It reminds me of when they're going in Star Trek 4 with the guy falling into the plasma and.
Yeah, I do like the music. I don't watch this intro every time, but I think it's a pretty good intro sequence.
Oh, I think the music is good. I think the score is good, but
same. I watched it the first time, and then I've skipped it for every other episode I've watched.
Yeah, it's long. It's a longer one, but you can see here in the credits, you got Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, who were both writers on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And I think a couple other shows as well as Enterprise. Of course, Ronald D. Moore, one of the co-creators of this show, along with Matt Wolpert and Ben Nadivi.
I also saw Junie Lowry Johnson did casting. She did casting for TNG and Deep Space Nine as well, I believe.
Yeah, so there's a lot of Star Trek people involved in this show. From like Jeff Russo has done a lot of the Star Trek themes, including the one from Star Trek Picard. But also, we can tell.
Oh, that I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. But some other good ones as well. Like he did the Strange New Worlds theme, and a lot of people like that. So it's
I do like the Strange New Worlds theme. It's good.
And we got our title card for All Mankind, which I also like. As this episode is written by Ronald D. Moore along with Matt and Ben. So I'm a huge Ronald D. Moore fan, and you can really, you see a lot of his fingerprints all over the show. And
we gotta get him on this show.
That would be good. If you let's work on that.
Intro. Yeah. Maybe we'll ask Tim Russ.
So after the credits, we go to Nixon's office in the White House, the Oval Office, I suppose, with all of this, like these tape recordings and, how the hell did this happen? How did the Russians get there first? Those bastards at NASA been acting like they've had everything under control, and they fumble the ball right at the goddamn goal line. Right at the goal. Yeah, sure looks like that way. H.R. Haldeman. So do you guys like this kind of historical sort of cutting away?
This is my favorite part of the show is this stuff.
Yeah.
I really like it.
The breakfast scenes I could do without. But
it's only one scene.
It's one time. It's not like Walt Jr. breakfast, okay? Like it's just one breakfast.
I'm worried I'm gonna get Walt Jr. throughout this show.
Jeff, it was the 60s. We had breakfast with our kids back then.
We didn't know any better.
Right. So Nixon's very concerned on this development. He's going to feel like, he says, Kennedy started the moon race, and then Nixon dropped the ball at the goal line. That's what people are going to say. I can't have this. I got to have a fall man. I got to blame somebody else.
He was such an insecure man.
Yeah. Then we go over to
I'd be somebody else.
Who'd that be? You?
Oh yes, I'm definitely.
Ed Baldwin and Karen Baldwin's home in Houston, where Ed is reading the front page newspaper of the Houston Sentinel saying Red Moon, Soviet cosmonaut Leonov, first man on lunar surface. Not Jeff's favorite scene in the episode, but he's
just get the breakfast out of the way.
What was he eating?
Why is he reading the paper he knows he hates? He's like,
I don't know. She's got a bag of Fritos there. Are they having Fritos for breakfast? It was the 60s.
They didn't know yet.
No, they had she put Fritos in the kids' lunch.
Oh,
I see.
Obviously,
just from like the set design and like the period accurate costumes and everything else, I think they do a great job.
Beautiful. The costume, like the dresses and the hair, the cars.
Yeah. Really well done. Of course, so Ed Baldwin's son comes in to say hi to him, and he has to ask Karen, did he finish school yet? No, he's got another week. Hey, you got another week left of school, bud? And he goes, yeah, I know. I'm the one going to school. But you can see here that Ed doesn't have a great or very close relationship with his son. He's not around a lot, and that's par
for the course in the 60s.
Right. Well, and also, being a busy astronaut man,
and also you're not allowed to have any emotions when you're a man in the 60s.
Correct.
So
especially towards
very hard to relate to your child at that time.
Yes. As our parents all grew up in this time, explains a lot. So it's anyway, so Ed and Karen's son goes on his way, and then Ed is talking to Karen here. Yeah, she says, do you want me to save you this paper with the red moon? He goes, yeah, no, throw it. But then on the other hand, he says, no, save it. I do want to save it for posterity. So he goes off, leaving Karen there. Then we go to Margot, who wakes up here in a bunk that is in NASA's Houston's Space Center. She basically is sleeping in her office and never going home. She's a workaholic. She's doing everything she can to get ahead. At this time, it's not easy being a woman in the space program, and she's does whatever she has to sort of, move up the ranks. So
what helps you move up the ranks? If you've got a pencil on the end of your toothbrush, so you can circle a diagram and put a question mark next to it at any time.
That's handy. That's an engineer's efficiency right there.
Yes, it is.
So she has this whole get ready for work routine while she's doing more equations and work by its side. With your point, she's got the pencil toothbrush combination.
She's like, I can't be the slowest worker. I work for Werner von Braun.
Okay, so that's something that I got to see in a lot of electrical classes. And what it actually is when it gets too short, you have to use something to make it longer so you can continue using the pencil. However,
excellent.
A toothbrush is a very odd pick for that.
So she's getting ready, and then she's right out to work, right into the hallway, cleaning her glasses. We then meet Deke. And this actor's name I can't remember, but he's from
Michael Ironside's son because he looks just
right.
He's like Michael Ironside's cousin or something.
No, but what's interesting is this guy probably has been in almost every action movie he's been in as well.
He was on True Blood.
This guy
on
is
The
a
Wire.
background actor a lot of the time.
Chris Bauer.
Chris Bauer.
Yeah.
I had to look him up because it was driving me crazy what I knew him from, and it turned out he was on an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He was the negotiator.
Oh my God! Right, he is the negotiator.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what
I know. I mostly know him from True Blood, but he's a pretty good actor.
We're funnier than you. That's why.
Yeah. So he's playing Deke. And Deke is like the head of the deciding which astronauts go up into space, and he's kind of like the head administrator. He's like the general manager almost of the program in some ways. So he goes in to meet with all the astronauts who are all looking pretty glum and depressed, and he say, "Well, I hope you're pissed off. And, as of right now, we're still planning to put Apollo 11 out there and Apollo 12, and the rest are on track. But we're not training today. Today is a day to be pissed off." He talks about when he was an astronaut in the Mercury program, about how John Glenn and some of the others were so pissed off when the Russians were the first to enter space. And John Glenn also said the F word, guys, if you can believe it. So
I'm scandalized as a young woman of the 60s. I can't imagine.
So Deke basically says, "I want you to go out, get angry, go get drunk, go get whatever this weekend, kick your dog if that's what you do, and and come back ready for work on Monday." That's
half the men in that room kick their dog
and beat the kids.
Well, Deke gave me an order. What could I do? I had to kick the dog.
Why would you need to kick a dog?
Well, I just think they couldn't say beat the kids.
Yes. Go beat your kids.
Get refreshed.
Dog equals kid. I get it.
Right. So as the astronauts are leaving the meeting room, they're like, "Hey, you want to go to the outpost? Go to the bar?" And they're saying they then start racing and said, "Last one there has to buy." So there's what becomes of the brokenhearted is the kind of the theme song of the episode.
Can we just stop right here? Whatever. Like all of these guys have Corvette.
They did, Jeff.
Jeff hates it.
There was a Houston dealership that gave them cars.
Yes. So
really,
however,
is this true? They actually have Corvettes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But what isn't true is them racing in the streets, because that actually didn't happen according to a lot of them. They did, however, race on the airport runways.
Okay.
They used to do a lot of drag racing. Yeah.
So, and remember, this is a little bit of a fictionalized version as well, but anyways, they'll
did
get
that
in
Apollo 13 as well.
Sorry, they didn't give them. They gave them good terms so they could lease these cars.
Terms, yeah.
Okay. They give them a discount at the Corvette dealership. So they're all heading down to the bar from the Houston Center. We even got here with Ed and Gordo giving each other the finger.
It was a good scene. It was a good scene.
Yeah, I like the scene too. It's fun. But
it's a good thing that the guy in the Corvette with the soft roof, though. It's a good thing he didn't floor it, because he would have took that roof right off.
Gordo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the other guy.
Oh, Ed.
The other guy's driving the one with the. Oh no, it is Gordo then. Sorry, because the roof is the felt one, right?
So
I honestly, guys, I love those Stingrays.
They are beautiful though.
They're nice looking cars.
It transitions to them in the bar now singing the song "What Becomes of the Brokenhearted." Clearly, they're a few rounds in at this point. They throw up the newspaper "Red Moon" up on the dartboard, and then they call
it's so
over.
Much like Top Gun, like this sort of.
Yeah, it feels it's very Top Gun-ish. Yeah, and most of these astronauts are military. Like they're so Ed comes
Test
from the
pilots.
Navy, but yeah,
What did
Pilots.
you sing in Top Gun? You've lost that love and feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right, yeah. But technically, the astronauts are on
Dave and I
loan
do a
from the
great
military, but
version of that in karaoke.
we do.
Oh, can't wait.
Then they call over the bartender. I forget her name.
Pam.
Pam, the bartender.
Where do
they
I
love-
know her from? She's from something I know. I just don't know what it is.
She looks familiar to me too.
She's a significant
I'll
character in
check.
this show as well.
Stand by.
Mhm.
I'll check.
Yeah. Anyway, so they get her to throw like the beer bottle at the newspaper on the dartboard, and they're blowing off some steam here. Everybody,
Show me your war face.
Yeah, that's how you show the Soviets who's boss.
You soak a newspaper in beer and waste it.
And then they just start throwing more bottles and everything at the newspaper as they're continuing that. Then we go to Werner von Braun in the NASA Center, who's meeting with the CIA and this other guy who's like Nixon's cabinet official representative for NASA. Anybody can help me out with character names, that would be great.
Whoa. That's my shtick.
The guy with the glasses, I can never remember his name, but he gives me like Elvis Costello vibes, so that's who I think of him as.
Okay, so Elvis Costello is he's like Nixon's representative here. He's like from the administration, and so they were talking to the CIA guy, and he was like, "Hey, we told you that they had an operational rocket. We were 80% sure." That it wouldn't be able to go to space or go to the moon, and you go and Deke's like only 80%, huh? Like great intelligence gathering there. So they got why they got fooled, who's to blame for this. They then have a press conference, publicly facing Werner, Deke, and Elvis Costello. Kind of talking about how the fact that the Russians got there first. What's the point of going second? We could, and the Americans could have been first. Apollo 10 had the potential to land on the moon, but didn't. It was meant as a test run, which is what happened in our timeline as well. That Apollo 10 was.
They got something wrong about that though. Apollo 10 did not have enough fuel to get back up off the moon, and they lied about that in this episode. They said that they would have, and that's not true. If Apollo 10 could have landed on the moon, but they could not have gotten off of it.
They couldn't have left.
Yeah,
It was too heavy.
Yeah, it was too heavy.
Right, which is kind of what Werner says here. He's like, "No, this is not true. It would not have enough fuel." But then then Deke is kind of like, acting like that's not true. We did have enough fuel, and the official story is incorrect. So believe what you
that's
will.
what I mean. They lied.
Did von Braun do press conferences?
No.
Yes.
Back then?
I think.
No.
I mean, he was in the public. I don't know if I've never seen one of him, but
I just imagine that they would want him to be a little more in the shadows.
he's in a lot of pictures with like with Kennedy and with like
okay.
he's all they did not have a problem taking his picture.
Okay.
Because I don't think everyone knew who he was.
You know what? Other than the Jody, like the anti-Jody stuff that I'm getting from Adam, I think you guys are very anti against this guy, and I just don't understand why.
I'll have to show you some pictures from around 1945.
Yeah, I know it. I know exactly. Anyway.
Then we go back to the outpost, and this reporter shows up. I think he's from the Houston paper, or maybe he's from Newsweek. Okay. And so he's going around to all the astronauts trying to get a story, but nobody's talking. But at this point, Ed Baldwin and Gordo Stevens are quite a few rounds in. They're playing some cards. And they're
I mean, did we all see this coming? Like the second the reporter character was introduced, I was like, somebody's going to run their mouth and ruin their own lives. And
There should be a PR guy with any guys in bars.
Yeah.
All I can think of is that this guy is the grown-up version of the kid from Almost Famous.
Yeah.
Gordo?
Oh, Patrick Fugit is the name of that. It's not played by the same guy, is it? He really does look like him.
Yep.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah.
So Gordo goes off to the bathroom, and then the reporter presses Ed, and Ed, he's like, "Come on, tell me something. You think we could have been to the moon first? What,
Surprise, Ed's drinking.
And Ed starts to have like these flashes from between when he was on the Apollo 10 mission, because in this timeline he's the commander of it versus whoever the real life astronaut was. And this idea that he could have landed on the moon in this timeline, Jeff, he does have enough fuel and he can go down and come back up. But that's his mission is just to do the orbit around the moon and come home. It's kind of like a test run in some ways for this. This
is also supposed to prove that NASA doesn't have guts, right?
Right. And so Ed starts talking to the reporter about the fire on Apollo 1, which is also kind of talked about a bit in the movie Apollo 13, which was, the first mission up, and then all those astronauts were burned to death.
Yes.
And Ed talks about the fact that he was a test pilot before he became an astronaut. He's like, as a test pilot, that stuff can happen to you, that you can die. But after those guys died in the fire, we lost all of our guts, and we never, we're not willing to take enough risk. Everything else there, and we see these flashes of how he could, in his fantasy, how he could have been the first man on the moon, but he chose not to do it. Is kind of this idea that's being shown here, and his regret and him second guessing those things as he's kind
that's just I think that's so poignant to show that, because I thought about how you would have to live with that for the rest of your life, just to know you could have landed on the moon and you chose not to, and an entire nation was waiting for that to happen, and you just didn't do it, and having
those were not his orders. He would have had to have gone beyond past his orders to do so. So then he gives the reporter all this information. The reporter's like, "Thank you very much. See you later," and he kind of goes off his way. Then we catch up with Aleda again in Mexico. We now see her mother has passed away, and she lights a candle on her grave here in Mexico. As her and her father are now going to try to make their way, over the U.S. border to go live up there. So, as she leaves her mother. So I guess sometime later here. It looks like I don't know if we have a date there, but.
Yeah, 30th of June.
So it was almost right after the moon landing then, because wasn't it like on the 22nd? So she died like a week after, it seems like.
Well, the Russian moon landing.
Yeah, the Russian moon landing specifically. When was the real moon landing?
July 20.
Right. Okay. So in this timeline, the Russians go like a month earlier than we would have, right? Or the Americans would have. So then we go back to NASA control. They're in the simulator, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, and they're trying to figure something out. We see that there's this technician in mission control who is trying to figure something out, but he can't quite figure out the equations. He's looking through all his books and he can't quite get there. But we see Margot, who is at this point still junior in her role in mission control. She knows the answer, and she tries to call over to him to tell him, it's actually this. But he says, "No, stay in your lane. You don't know what you're doing, Margot. This is my department." And she says, "No, you got to look. The computer needs to be rebooted or something like that."
Why is it always a Nedry type?
Yeah, right. Ultimately, here in this situation, the guy keeps control. He gives this information. He doesn't know what to do, and so they have to abort the simulated landing. So, not a great result. Werner von Braun overlooking things, then comes to see Margot in the kind of observation deck here, where he's like, "You should have said the right answer. You knew the answer, and because she's like." She thinks she's in trouble initially for not staying in her lane, but we find out that he would have rather her just be right. He's a scientist at the end of the day.
This I actually found one of the more chilling moments from von Braun, because all he says is all that matters is the work. And coming out of his mouth, all that matters is the work. Do anything to further the work. I was just like, wow. Yeah.
You know what? That I, as I said earlier, I didn't know about him, and so the second time I watched it, which was tonight, that scene really hit different for real.
Yeah, we'll find out here that Werner von Braun in this fictionalized universe is friends with Margot's father from the University of Huntsville in Alabama. So they have like this. That's how I guess she got the job. When she goes, yes, sir. Whatever.
Do you know who he was also like best friends with?
Hitler?
Walt Disney.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was close.
Walt
Totally.
Disney was his best friend.
Almost the same guy, really.
I was just guessing, but
He probably knew Hitler too. Maybe the only guy ever to know Walt Disney and Hitler.
So then we go back to NASA control. And Deke is looking at the Newsweek magazine, and we see that cover there.
He's not happy.
Ed Baldwin's been called into the principal's office, everybody, and he's in trouble for having said those things. And we find out that Werner wants to kick Ed out of the entire program, but Deke fought for him to stay sort of in a demoted role, in some kind of administrative role.
Apollo applications. Is what they
Apollo
said.
applications. He might have to go to Siberia. Or something like that, but he was supposed to be the commander for Apollo 12, and it's looking like that could be in jeopardy now, or 15 maybe he was meant.
Yeah,
to
I thought he said
15.
15.
Yeah, he's meant to be the commander of
15.
Apollo 15, right? So they're like, but Deke says, I don't even know if there will be an Apollo 12, let alone 15. So you better start playing ball, because you going out there and saying we don't have guts and we don't have this and we don't have that didn't help the program. It's putting the program at risk. So there's kind of this whole confrontation, which he's completely correct about. Yeah. So Ed is kind of taken aback by all this and really shocked. Then we get this sequence here with a young Ted Kennedy.
I love this. I love this.
Right? Where he's talking about, like, well, how did the Russians land on the moon first? We got to have some investigative committee hearings and get to the bottom of all this. Meanwhile, we get these sequences here with Nixon saying, you know what Teddy's really doing, don't you? That goddamn pissant's going to use these hearings to grandstand against the administration. Going to get up there and say how NASA was bolder under his brother and how they lost their edge under Nixon. This is the opening of the campaign.
But what was great about this is that there it is. Kennedy, just you watch. He canceled his Chappaquiddick weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the weekend where you got the woman killed?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen in this timeline.
Yes.
Right.
Everything is
okay.
changing from 1966 on.
Because he was going to be the runner for president in 72.
And then that happened.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
he
probably would have won or got killed. Let's be real, he probably would have been killed.
Well,
Yeah.
third Kennedy in a row. Yeah, but in our timeline, he gets a hooker killed, basically crashes drunk driving.
She was a very nice girl. Come on.
I mean, a nice hooker girl. And
Hey, not cool.
No. A woman was killed. And anyway, then there's a scene here with Ed and Karen, where she's finding out that he's gonna have to quit NASA potentially. Now that he's not going to accept this demotion. And she said, well, you're gonna have to go back to the Navy. We're gonna have to move. This is gonna throw off our whole life. You're gonna go back to the aircraft carriers, and he's like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know. So she's not happy here.
Okay. This acting, it's really good acting, and she's doing a fantastic performance. But I'm like, why is this necessary? Like, I'm watching this episode. I'm like, this is intense. Like, and I get like what they're introducing. This is like the most stressful part of their lives, but I'm like, this is the pilot. Like, I'm like, this, like, I was just watching this. I'm like, it's a great performance and everything. I'm not knocking her, but like, look, her eyes are watering. She's basically like giving this guy hell because he never tells her anything, and he's like blabbing to a reporter while getting drunk, which I understand why she's mad.
I think that's more the frustration of women in general at this time period.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's showing that women of this time period were completely beholden to their husbands' dreams and desires, and they have to put those things aside and just go where the husband's work takes them, or any sort of things like that. So she never gets told anything, just has to go along with it.
Right. And he didn't tell her about the interview with Newsweek at all, so that she was also blindsided by that. So he's then sleeping on the couch a little while later, which is too small for him. But eventually he comes to bed, and she welcomes into bed that his neck's all sore, and she's like,
he's like, oh, my neck hurts.
Yeah, she's like, good.
Get back on the couch.
Yeah. Then back at NASA, they're getting ready for the launch of Apollo 11 in 14 days. We see Ed comes in now, accepting his demoted role. He's in the suit, and he's not necessarily popular with the other astronauts right away. But he says, I got some intel for you, some new telemetries and work done for landing on the surface. Here you go. So, Neil Armstrong in particular seems to give him a bit of absolution here for his sins, and says, hey, go sit over there, Siberia.
Yeah, Siberia sits over there.
Yeah.
I like that scene. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I like this little face he makes when Deke comes in. He kind of goes,
Yeah.
Kind of slides down the wall a bit.
And Deke kind of goes, good. You stay over there for now. So you're in the doghouse, sir.
Just before because we did this, just dishonor that woman. Her name was Mary Jo Kopechny. She was actually on the presidential campaign team with Robert Kennedy.
Oh, really?
She was going to a
So
party.
she wasn't a prostitute at all.
No.
I apologize. I always thought she was.
sex worker is the correct term, which she
sex
wasn't.
worker. But she wasn't that either. So
No, but that is one of the people that, like, when her name came across the screen, that I paused the show and asked Google if she was a real person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you
I
go.
wasn't sure.
So Cape Kennedy, Florida, is they're getting ready for the launch. They're up here on the deck. It's Werner and Elvis Costello and Deke. Man, we got to learn that character's name. They're pulling off the little plaque off of the ship that would have said, we were the first men on the moon, because of course they're not going to be the first men on the moon. And Werner makes a comment about it just being extra weight. Then some test pilots fly overhead, and
It'd be great if they scratch it out and put second.
Yeah, second. Whatever.
Just with a Sharpie.
Yeah.
We got some more training sequences here with the astronauts as they're getting ready, doing things, and then they got their launch. Their little launch sequence. Everyone's clapping for them, cheering them on as they're heading up
Very
there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And just like the iconic spacesuit.
Yes.
I think they did a really good job with this scene. It looks very period accurate to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then in the mission control, we got Gene Kransk here, the head guy of mission control. He gives this speech about how this is keeping the entire program going is what it's at stake here, and that he needs the whole team, and they're the best, and it's very motivational.
Failure is not an option.
Failure is not an option. We got to go. And as I mentioned, this is the character that Ed Harris plays in Apollo 13. Well, it's a real life person, not just a character. But yeah,
I was hoping for an Aerosmith song, but it didn't happen.
No.
Gene Kranz still alive.
Yeah,
Is he?
91 years old.
What?
Oh, wow.
Yep. Still alive.
Oh,
Huh.
interesting.
Heather,
Anyway,
some of us were born in the 70s. It's not that exciting.
I was born in
1933.
1979, babe.
mhm.
I know.
Yeah, only Jeff and I were born in the 80s of this group. Anyway, so
Aw.
while the launch is taking place here, we go back to Mexico, where Leda and her family and some other Mexican migrants are moving over the border. I guess they have a radio so they can listen to it in real time as they're going through the fields.
I
And-
like to say right here where they cut to the exterior shot of the moon and we see the spacecraft for the first time. I thought it was so cool that they had it dead silent, because that's what space really is. There's no sound. It's a vacuum. And in Star Trek, we have all the sound effects. We have explosions. We have the sound of the ship going by, but I just thought it was a really cool choice to cut from all the sound to dead silence in space. I thought that was
The
a good
shots of the
choice.
moon too are quite beautiful. Like they it looks awesome. Like
Yeah,
Mhm.
visual effects of it all,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
good. We get some sequences here with the reporter, the NASA astronaut Fred Talmadge, explaining how the modules work, and
So he
disconnected.
was actually on Apollo 10.
that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Mm.
And then in the outpost, they're all watching this take place. I think this is where the bartender, her name again,
Pam.
Pam asks Gordo basically, what would you have said if you were the first man on the moon, Ed? And he goes, "Oh, I never really thought about it," which of course he had. If he had to be, he's like, "I bet you wouldn't be saying, praise to the Marxist Leninist way of life or anything like that." But
I just love
I
George
think,
Washington.
I think when Ed said, I don't know, never thought about it, it's basically right after he had this conversation with his wife where she said, "Oh, you're blabbing around to the reporter, but what you told me is that you don't talk about this with your friends. You don't talk about it with your
Right.
wife. You don't talk about it at all." And then we have this scene where Pam asked him, "What would you have said?" And he immediately is like, "I don't know. I never thought about it." So I thought maybe those two things were
that's a good point.
related,
I
right?
hadn't
He's
I
going
hadn't
back
thought
to
about that.
climbing
But
up. Yeah.
that could be the case. But
That's how it read to me.
in the midst of this conversation, Gordo then kind of goes into this little soliloquy where he talks about the riots in Chicago, I guess in 1968, with the Democratic primary or the convention. Yeah, and how it was all those race riots and cops beating up black people and other people, protesters of the Vietnam War, amongst
and
others. And,
Bobby had just been killed, and Martin Luther King had just been killed.
yeah.
There's a lot going on.
And so
I
Gordo
was
kind of
thinking about that during that scene where he's talking about that. It's truly sad that all of those things are still going on today.
right.
Yep.
And that's for him. This is like those events are a year before, right? So
Yeah.
he's talking about all that. It gets kind of deep and dark, and then he kind of, he makes a joke by the end of it, and he kind of all comes out. Can't remember what the punchline was, but
It was, "I come in peace 3 times a night."
oh right, sorry, good memory. Then
I
back
just
in
watched it before the episode.
back in
That guy-
orbit,
That guy's got infinite energy, man.
we see that the is it called the LIM?
Lem.
LAM.
LEM, LEM, lunar something
Lunar-
module.
What is it? Lunar evacuation module or something? I can't remember.
Disconnects from the main
Exploratory module.
capsule. And we see
I'll
here
look
that
up now.
as the Eagle is going down, and they lose signal for a little while here. Back in, I guess this is at the Baldwin house where Karen is here with Tracy.
So
Gordo's
wait.
wife.
Who, Kevin, you saw this for the first time. Heather, you saw this for the first time. It was like I
Mhm.
saw this for the first time because I don't remember any of it. This was like, so they lost the race to the moon, and now this happens. And I was thinking, this is bad. This is their morale is just in the shitter right now. It's not going.
Mhm. Mhm.
Deke's wife shows up here at this party to watch like the Apollo 11, I guess, landing, and so we find out that Deke's wife is kind of like the queen of the wives, and that the wives have a certain role that they play with the astronauts in their social circles and the politics of it all.
Dave,
Can I just
got
say
your
that
answer,
Marge
Dave.
looks amazing? The hair, the suit, the makeup, just perfection. Gorgeous.
Yeah,
So
So-
posh.
So LEM stands for Lunar Excursion Module. So there you go.
Thank you.
I wanted to be accurate.
So Marge calls out Karen for a chat outside next, and we just get from the reactions between Tracy and Karen that Marge is not necessarily the nicest all the time. So they start having a smoke out front,
Of course.
as you do. And basically, how they want to deal with the fallout of the article that Ed gave to Newsweek, and Marge asks Karen to get Ed to publicly deny he ever said those things, just to say it was a lie. The reporter made it all up. It's fake. And if he's lucky, he can stay in the program. If he does this for the team. And Karen goes, "I don't know. He's, he duty,
He went
honor.
to Annapolis.
He went to the Annapolis Naval Academy, everybody. Like, he believes in these things. And she goes, I believe in things too. I believe in those things, but I go about them differently, Marge says to Karen. So Karen's little...
She believes in those three things, but sometimes you have to just pick two.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you only get to pick two of them.
Yeah.
Duty, honor, and sacrifice. Were those the things?
Yeah.
My auntie just came in from the other room and handed me a note that said LEM, Lunar Excursion Module.
She is,
Thank you.
she is
Karen.
correct.
Fact checking for me.
Right. We're also seeing here more with the Leda and the Mexican migrants coming over. They're listening to the coverage of the landing. Then we catch up with Werner von Braun and Margot in this boardroom having a drink, talking about it all. I think they're talking about her father, and everything else. They have a little toast to the landing, which we'll find out is a bad luck thing, I guess, with Germans. They, if you drink to something, or maybe it's not just Germans, but if you drink to something that hasn't yet happened, it can be a bad omen. So there goes the Lunar Excursion Module. Michael Collins, who's the astronaut who stays in the main capsule there, he says Godspeed, crew. As Buzz and Armstrong head on down, they're all watching here in the bar, getting their drinks on. Shots are being poured for anticipation of the celebration. The wives are getting ready to celebrate it all. And then there's and meanwhile in Mexico, Aleda and them are trying to get across the border, and we can see that the moon, a full moon in the sky, very prominent, in sort of how all of these characters and places and things with
Hold on. They don't use mile in Mexico.
Even in the 60s?
No.
When did they go to metric?
I don't know when, but I don't think they did.
Well, it's for American audience.
Anyway.
So they're translating it to English, I suppose, into American. So they have to go silent from now on. We get some great visuals here. Really feeling like this landing.
Is this supposed to be like July 20th, like again?
Yes.
Or is it a different...
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
it was not a full moon that day. That's
Another historical inaccuracy.
it was a
That
waxing
moon
crescent.
wasn't full either in that shot. It wasn't a full moon.
No,
You know
but
what?
it was a
That
waxing
just
crescent.
ruined the whole thing for me.
It was like one of those moons where you just see the sliver of it. Like that's what it was.
That's
that
it. I'm
Turn
done.
the show off.
I'm done.
That's
There's
it.
too many
Game
inaccuracies
over.
in this fictional show.
Yeah. They're not using the metric system. They're making full moons where there weren't any.
I could have let them get away with that one, but the moon not being full, forget it.
Cannot abide.
Okay. Also, like, I'm watching this episode and I get what you're saying that like the Mexican story here is going to be important, but like this is the pilot. Like, can they connect it in some way? Like,
Nope.
Not in this
They
episode.
Not
absolutely
yet.
don't.
Not yet.
they're like, no, you're gonna have to wait 5 episodes.
Aleda will become very important, but she's not there yet, I
I
guess.
gathered she would.
So, anyway, so
When the time jumps happen.
yeah. So we see the Eagle is headed on down. They're going pretty fast, and then we see they see some boulders, I think, through the windows here. Like, just imagine how scary it would be to try to land this thing made of tinfoil on the moon going this fast,
And they missed their landing zone. So
They missed their landing zone. Is that what happened in real life? Is that what happened originally? No.
No.
So why does it happen in this timeline? Maybe that.
Because they're all under pressure.
Maybe.
Because the moon wasn't full, like they said it was going to be.
Right. They're like, we thought this was a crescent moon, and it's
Because
That's
the Russians landed in their spot, they had to change. They had to move.
maybe.
Yeah.
That first Mad movie is all about him trying to figure out how to land that thing.
Oh yeah, you're gonna see this in a future episode. Them trying to fly this thing, just in like the base and how hard it is.
Jeff,
Yeah.
for such a boring movie, you really talk about The First Man a lot.
It stuck with me. I saw it in theaters and I said never again.
It stuck with them because it seemed like a 12-hour movie.
It not far off.
He
It
still
felt like I
thinks
watched
he's
the
in it.
whole season.
He still thinks he's watching it.
Yeah.
That's how boring it is.
So boring.
Anyway, so they lose contact with the Eagle. It seems to go in pretty hard into the surface here. And they have no signal, and it's kind of like, what now? What happened? It's kind of like an Apollo 13 situation here, where they don't know what to do.
Even watching this the second time when they lost comms, my blood ran cold, like I got goosebumps and just like worry. I found they really captured it very well.
They sure
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So they're all stunned. Everyone's watching on Earth in different places. The families of these astronauts and the friends, as they don't know what to do. And they also call up to Michael Collins, who of course is in orbit, and he's only gonna be able to see the site in a certain amount of hours because they go around so often. He couldn't see anything directly with his eyes. So, it's about 8:00, 8:14 when this happens. And then all of a sudden it's like 2 hours later, and they still have had no contact whatsoever. And this goes on. And they're starting to wonder, are they dead? Did they, that the hull of the ship is so fragile that, they could have easily punctured, but they are wearing spacesuits. So that would theoretically protect them. But
if the ship won't work, there's no way to get them.
Right. There's no way for Collins to go down and get them.
Because the other part of this module can't land. It doesn't have that ability.
So so he's able to look through this little telescope thing that he has and see the site, but he can't. I think he can see the ship, but he can't see much else.
Yeah, because he's too far away from it to be able to actually see
anything detailed. Right.
He can see the site and he can see the ship, but that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. You can't see people or them walking around or anything of that nature. There you can see that you can see kind of what's happening there. And then in the control center that has a really bad camera feed at this point, they can barely see anything on the surface as people are watching around the world in anticipation. What's happened to these astronauts? Is this a situation like the Challenger, where they're all dead or not? Then we see Marge, the wife of Deke, says, "Okay, we got to work out here. Some of us are going to go over to the wife of Armstrong. Some of you go over to the wife of Aldrin, and etc. And we're going to try to, some of us could deal with the press. Let's get to it, ladies." And they go into, and Karen's meant to stay here, I think, and just wait for anything else to happen. I think we get some Nixon tapes here more, where they say the astronauts are probably dead. Having survived a plane crash of this nature is very low. Nixon goes, such a tragedy. So they prepared him a statement to talk about how they're dead, and he reads it as kind of like a run through. In ancient days, better ancient times, I think, men looked at stars and saw their heroes in the constellations. In modern times, we do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood, and these men will remain the foremost in our hearts. For every human being who looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of another world that is forever mankind. Okay, then they go, that's great, Nixon. We'll do it just like that. Then we see here Von Braun is kind of having a sit down. He's kind of looking depressed, I guess. Margot comes to see him. And this is where he talks about, I never should have had that drink with you, that cheers. That's what did this.
That's what caused this.
Yeah. I've never done anything wrong in my life.
Only that. Only having a drink ahead of time.
Yeah. That was where everything went wrong.
So then they come over to talk to Elvis Costello. They call up to Michael Collins. They say, Michael Collins, you got to come home. We're calling the game. And he goes, nope, I'm not coming home. I always said if something like this happened, I would wait as long as possible. And they're like, he can't stay up there. He can't. He has to come home, right? And then they talk about going to get his wife and getting her to come in to talk to him to try to convince him to turn around the ship.
They're bringing in the big guns now.
You think maybe get Nixon on the phone. Maybe he'd take an order from the president, but maybe not. I'm sure Michael Collins was in the military, but he's like, I'm not leaving them behind. They're getting ready. But then all of a sudden, there's a call. There's a little communication on the system. And they reestablish contact here with Neil and Buzz after a few seconds. And there's a huge celebration all around here in the outpost, back in the Baldwin home.
Daddy's alive.
Michael Collins himself, very happy up in the spaceship.
I don't have to start.
Legit, they did so well with building the tension for this, and
Yes.
I because it's alternate history, they got me with the fake out. I legit thought it wasn't coming back. It was going to be done. And then the series was going to be like dealing with the fallout of that. But they really got me. And as soon as the crackle came back and they knew it, I burst into tears. Just happy tears. Beautiful. What a cool show.
And these moonshots look amazing with them on the moon.
Really cool.
Did you also catch the throwaway line where they said they don't have enough gas to get back into orbit?
No. But clearly they will get up there.
Well, they implied it, but
which is what happened would happen for Apollo 10. So,
yeah,
right. But why not them? Because they have the actual fuel on board.
Well, like at the end, you see like the modules like kind of like on an angle, so you're like, oh, not good.
Right. I think that they have to deal with that in the next episode. Heather, you've watched it more recently than I have, but
I have, yeah.
I think they have to solve the problem of the damage to their ship here, but. But for the moment, Buzz and Neil, they're just having a grand old time here on the moon, just hopping around. It's always fun watching people hop like bunnies on the moon. And
just those space suits with like the reflective shielding and the American flag, like that imagery is so iconic. Very, very cool.
Yes.
So white, so starkly white.
Whoa! Hold on, we're angry at Americans right now.
Right.
Yeah, but this was a good hit.
This is in the 60s.
These are fake Americans, Jody.
Fictionalized Americans.
Fictional. Also,
fictional
Jody,
characters.
this is them losing the space race. It's fine.
You know what?
Okay.
You didn't have to straighten that ship out. There's no way they can launch on that angle.
Yeah, how are they going to launch that? They're going to have to try to like get it level again, right? And
just pull it down. No gravity.
Yeah.
Even that speech you read of Nixon, I know it's a fake Nixon speech, but I'm like listening to that, and I'm like, even as surly as Nixon was, you're like, that guy still is speaking like in a better speech than anything that we get now. Like,
Trump?
It's
Yeah.
not just Trump, but Biden. Like Obama was pretty good, but just modern presidents in general. Like you're like, this is not great. Like
because they had something to do. Like this is monumental. Like this is giant. Getting to the moon.
Right. Huge. Yeah, historic. And then What Becomes of the Brokenhearted is the song that plays out here as we go into the credits.
They really got their mileage out of the money they spent on licensing that song because they use it like 4 times in this episode. It was great. Really good motif woven through the show.
I like that song, so I'm good.
Good.
Me too.
Does anyone have facts for us?
I do.
I have what I show my screen. I'll show you what the moon actually looked like on that day. There it is. That's what it looked like.
That's a website, Jeff. That's not the moon.
Well, with all that,
I thought you were going to show us the picture of the moon from the
Have you seen the moon?
I couldn't find one.
All right. Well, we got
I left
fun facts,
and nobody even noticed.
Yeah. Let's go. Fun facts with Adam.
All right.
Fun facts with Adam.
Okay, so during his speech, Gene Kranz says that failure is not an option. This was actually the title of his autobiography in real life. But did you know Kranz never actually said that? It was Ed Harris in Apollo 13 who ad-libbed it, and Kranz liked it so much he put it on the title of his book.
He retconned himself. He's like, yeah, I get it.
He retconned something that
an actor made up, and then he was
I
like,
love
you know
that.
what? That's good. I like that.
Good job.
Never
Good job,
happened,
Kranz.
but I'll use it.
Well, they used it wrong in this episode too, compared to Apollo 13. Okay, let's say Leonov actually trained to fly the lunar lander and was selected to be the first Russian to land on the moon. However, the unmanned Soviet N-1 moon rocket failed all 4 times. It was launched, and the Soviet moon landing program ended.
Well, it's nice that he got to do it in this show. Justice for Alexei Leonov. Good job.
At the bar during the Apollo 11 mission, Gordon Stevens talks about the events in Chicago in the previous week, and he describes watching the police beating kids. He's talking about the Days of Rage demonstration with the Student Democratic Associations. The protests occurred from October 8th to 11th and were part of the movements against the Vietnam War, where 800 students faced 2,000 policemen and members of the National Guard, resulting in more than 35 injured and 250 arrests. So, to your guys' point, are we getting there again? Maybe.
Sounds so far-fetched.
We're already there.
Yeah.
Flight director Gene Kranz was wearing a black or gray vest in this series. In real life, Kranz's wife made him a new white vest for every mission he was the flight director for. And it was a key point in Apollo 13.
Yeah, they had that. They had that scene in Apollo 13.
Yeah, new
brings
vest.
The box in. He brings the box. The one guy brings the box into him.
Inside the command module, Michael Collins is shown having grown a mustache. This is historically accurate and kept his famous mustache through the quarantine after returning to Earth.
And then he realized it wasn't doing him any good because he was quarantined with 2 other dudes. So he's like, I just better shave this shit off.
Listen, dudes like mustaches.
I don't think it was allowed, actually, back in for those guys. In actual history, Werner von Braun managed the Saturn V rocket, but was not involved in the mission planning or control, and especially not crew assignments. Deke Slayton and Christopher Kraft were responsible for crew assignments.
So Deke Slayton was a real person.
Yes.
And so Werner couldn't have said, I want Ed out of the program. That wouldn't have something he would have done in real life.
And then in reality, Apollo 10 did not land on the moon because the LM was overweight. The program was not ready for a landing in terms of software, procedures, or equipment. Landing software for the computer was still being completed during the run-up to Apollo 10, and mission rules and procedures and checklists were still being developed. If they decided to have the Apollo 10 crew land on the moon in the spacecraft, they would not be suitable for the astronauts and would have needed 2 more months of training to barely be ready to land. As it was, Apollo 11 had difficulties with the landing, and it was just after utilizing the knowledge gained from the Apollo 10 dress rehearsal were they able to do it.
Okay, so that was never in the cards, Apollo 10 landing.
That's right. And during the Mexican border scene, here it is, Jeff, the moon appears almost full. In reality, it was less than half full.
Why change it?
Full.
Why?
So they can look up at the moon while they're crossing the border.
Yeah. These
It
are
was
the
to
things
provide
that
the right
drive me
amount of
nuts
light.
About historical shows and movies. It's just like you didn't need to change it. It took me 2 seconds to look that up. Why are you changing it? You know?
I don't think a little sliver of a moon would have looked good on screen.
I think it would have looked awesome.
Yeah.
It would have been historically accurate as far as Jeff made
It
it.
looked awesome on the website.
That's what's important.
And then finally, the speech that Nixon rehearses after has assumed that Apollo 11 has crashed is that part of the actual speech prepared in such an eventuality. The text of the speech was called "In the Event of the Moon Disaster," which concluded with a note: "A clergyman should adopt the same procedure as a burial at sea, commending their souls to the deepest of the deep," and concluding with the Lord's Prayer. Thank goodness we didn't see that.
No, good thing. Okay, well, thank you, Adam. And let's get into our ratings for this episode that we've talked all about it now. Boom. All right.
You got a new spreadsheet for this one?
I sure do. Got a brand new one. Well, it's part of the same workbook. Jody, you're up first.
I know, because I should be up front. So let's. I'm just kidding.
And on time, Jody. And on time.
Sometimes. I'm going to give this an 8.5.
Okay. Adam.
I am so into this show right now. I'm giving this a full 10. I loved it. I didn't remember watching it the first time, so this is great.
Oh, settle down, Davin.
Yeah, I'm also going to go 10 on this one. It's pretty good.
Oh man, I'm turning into the guy
9.
that
It's a great first episode. It grabs you right away.
I'm
Heather?
into that guy.
10 out of 10. Perfect pilot. Amazing.
Now, how many points will Jeff deduct for lack of moon realism? And
0.5.
Dude, a lot. It means a lot. 6.9.
What? 6.9.
Well, at least I wasn't the lowest.
Jeff, are you serious?
Oh, 100%. There's things that I wasn't just that. There's a bunch of different things in the episode that alternate history stuff like bugs me. So like I like the show, but it bugs me. Like, you know,
he will always be bugged.
Heather, 3.1 it bugged him by.
3.1.
It's probably just going to
I
get
can
worse
tell.
from here. Like, I won't be surprised if I play season 3.
This never happened. This never
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah,
Zero.
never happened.
Well, Jeff, like, you know, should it become more forgivable from here because now, like, the history is different? And
It's
then
probably, I don't know how I'll feel once the further we go. I'll
because
either get
it gets more and more divergent, of course, as you would imagine, right? Like, different people get elected president, and different, like, there's a whole bunch of
Don't be spoiling for Kevin now.
yeah.
We're
just-
Adam.
Fine.
This the show that this reminds me of the most was there was one called the Man in the High Tower or something like that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, that was a
basically-
good show too.
Yeah, it was cool, but again, it bugs the crap out of me. It's like, so you're just making everything up. Like you're just like, oh, what would
Yeah,
happen?
it's fiction, Jeff.
Yeah, but but you're basing it off like history. You're like, this would have happened if this happened. It's like you don't know that.
Isn't the smoke in front of Jody?
All we should say is, why did we stop smoking? It's great.
well, eventually we'll die off with the show, but yeah, they're going pretty accurate with all the smoking on the show. So episode 1 is got an average of 9.1. Everybody, Jeff mostly bringing that down, and the next episode is called "He Built the Saturn V," or the
I
Saturn
thought it was
V.
4.
No, it's
I
a
thought
5.
it was 4. I haven't been
okay.
paying
Yeah.
attention.
And in that
That does
episode,
make more sense, though.
In that episode, after a harrowing liftoff made necessary by their near crash landing, the crew of Apollo 11 successfully returned from the moon, and director Werner von Braun opposes Nixon's directive to build a military moon base, and things go from there.
Hey, they give me a good Werner von Braun episode. I'll give it a good.
The next episode is very much about von Braun. So you a lot.
Can't go into space without making a moon space station. Come on now.
Nixon wants a base on the moon. He's going to have a base on the moon. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know what he's going to put there? A bowling alley.
$1 million.
Well, okay. Well, thanks everyone for being with us tonight for our debut podcast of For All Mankind. We hope you enjoyed yourself. And we'll be back in a week's time to talk about the next one. Check out our other great content here on the channel. We just did a 2-hour interview with Steve Shives from his self-titled YouTube channel, where we got into Star Trek, we got into politics, and a whole bunch of other things. So go listen to that if you haven't already. Also, we did a Star Trek Day symposium, Adam, Justin, and I, on Saturday for April 5th. So you can listen to that. And First Contact Day.
Speaking of First Contact, I just want to say one more thing about the show. In this episode where Aleida and her father, he takes her to the space station and she touches one of the rockets, and it was very much giving First Contact vibes with Picard and Data touching the Phoenix for the first time. I thought about that during that scene.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
He's
mean?
never allowed to touch it.
I liked the scene where they had the plaque and like von Braun's like, that's weight.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what?
There's always extra weight anyway.
No,
Who cares?
he's like,
Not a sentimental man, let's say.
no.
No.
More on that next week.
Well, and this Thursday, we'll be continuing our Star Trek The Next Generation reviews. We'll be covering Season 2, Episode 11, Contagion, with the Iconian Gateways.
But
When
the
you
real
get a
question
laser
is-
in your head.
Yeah. Well, when you get it spread all over your forehead, that's always a problem. But the real question, though, Dave, is how much pudding is going to be involved?
Maybe a lot. Maybe a little.
As
Who's
much
to
as
say?
can be replicated.
You know what? They're going to have to tune in to find out the pudding.
Yeah, I think we have Jody, Heather, and Adam on Thursday. So look out for that.
Poor Adam. I mean, it'll be fun. Wow, that joke didn't land. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for being with us tonight. Thanks to the whole panel. Really appreciate you guys coming down this journey with the show with me, and we'll we'll leave you for another night. Live long and podcast, everyone. I don't have any kind of quote, and we do this for all mankind. See you next time.
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. Tune in to X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show. Artistic interviews with graphic histories. A roundtable movie discussion with, hey, did you see this one? and movie reviews with Hold Up, a movie podcast. And while you're at it, spin a few records with Eamon on Track. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.